Did you know that women were left out of clinical trials until the 1990s? Here's what that means, and here's how it impacts us now. Clinical trials are basically a test that is designed to prove or disprove a theory. This is how we test out things like new drugs for specific illnesses or even vaccines. Clinical trials are extremely important for us because we need to know whether or not something is actually effective or not. The main reason that women were left out of clinical trials until the 1990s is because there was an assumption that there was no difference between men and women in a physical sense. So if something works for a man, it would work for a woman too. So here's what that means for us now in 2022. A lot of the research that we have that came before women were a huge part of clinical trials, which nowadays is around 49%, is skewed because different illnesses present differently depending on your biological sex. Things like heart disease and autism show up differently depending upon which reproductive organs you have. This means that women are way more often misdiagnosed or untreated for conditions that they have that are very dangerous. It also means that our dosing is way off because all the dosing that we have is based on the male body and not the female. It's important to note that the NIH and the FDA both made huge strides in the 90s to include women in clinical trials, but we're still seeing the aftermath of that loss of inclusion from the times before the 1990s. And while we're making gains in this area, women of color are still wildly misrepresented in clinical trials. The bottom line here is that we can make a difference if we all bring attention to issues like these so that researchers will be forced to make some changes for inclusion.